Mark?
Fuck, shit, cunt, bastard, twat, asshole. Even crap, hell and damn. Where do you go from there? We're going to be talking to that right about now with Skinny E Media and our usual Bobatron as we do a podcast on bad language.
Hello, indeed we will. Hello there. And so, begs the question, Mark, do you know George Carlin's 7 dirty words?
I do. I wish I could repeat them off in my tongue right now, but...
I'll do it for you. I'll do it
Go
for
on.
you. Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucking tits.
That's the one. And I should have known that because I've done a little remix of that 7 Deadly Sins. So, 7 Filthy Words songs. And I recently saw like a exclusive for friends out there as part of my MXQ music. So yeah, and he got in a lot of trouble for that. Many radio stations were fined, and his career would quite not be the same again. Although he is quite popular on sort of underground circuits, and he even managed to appear as a voiceover in Cars. That's a kids' movie, so there you go.
He's also on at least one episode of The Simpsons. By the way, he did actually add an extra 3 words onto that, fart, turd, and twat, 2 of which are quite mild, which added to, which of course was the inspiration for the song Family Reunion by Blink-182, which is just those 10 words sung 4 times in a row.
That song, weirdly enough, I've never even heard of, but I've heard of quite a few Blink-182 songs, because that's what all the millennials were big on back in the day. But before him, you had Lenny Bruce, and he was certainly pushing the envelope. But in all fairness, when you look at Carlin and Bruce, they seem now mild by comparison compared to what you can get away with on these stand-up specials. I mean, granted, but it's probably less of the racist and sexist banter and more of the use of 4-letter expletives. So there's a bit of a trade-off, but take that as you will. Out of all those lads that you...
I say it's a fair trade.
Well, depends on which one. For every Roy Chubby Brown and Andrew Dice Clay, you have mild types. You know, your Rowan Atkinsons, and then on the US end, you've got Jeff Foxworthy and Larry the Cable Guy, who tended to be a bit more vanilla, use no profanity that I'm aware of, or keep it to at least like hell, maybe ass, the mild stuff. But yes, so just out of curiosity for anyone who's out there, I am in public. If there's a background noise, I do apologize. Because I'm in public, I've got to be a bit careful about what I say. So in this instance, I'm going to
I think you chose a rather awkward subject, considering you'd be doing this in public.
Oh yes, well, thankfully I'm in a situation where there aren't a lot of English speakers, not to give too much away, so I can probably get away with it, but I probably won't be having as much of a silver as you. So I'll let you fire away at it, Mr. Fuckface, or you call me Mr. Shithead.
Well, to quote South Park, I'll call you a shit-faced master. Okay, so I mean, where are we gonna start and everything? I mean,
as always, your first experience with this sort of thing. Now, you were certainly a lot more easygoing with this than I was, because you saw Bottom live specials which had more swearing in it.
I didn't see any of them live. I mean, I never watched them on video, and the first one I saw was when I was about 12, which was the Hooligans Island one. I watched Bottom quite a bit growing up, and there was stronger than typical language on a sitcom. Although Men Behaving Badly might have rivaled it, but certainly stronger than you might have heard on American TV and American sitcoms. As I've mentioned a million times, of course, I did see RoboCop when I was very young, and that would have had quite a bit of bad language in. Obviously, I would have seen only the R-rated version, but that kept in all the bad language anyway, like all the your company built the fucking thing, and Well, I said, you'll be one bad motherfucker and all that shit. And fuck Jones and everything. And all countless other forms of bad language. I did see Terminate. I saw Terminator 2 when I was about 7, I think, and that would have all the bad language in. I saw Terminator a few years later, about the BB version that was broadcast on BBC One. They just cut out all the bad language, so that was a bit shit. Yeah, I mean, I can't say the first time I heard heard my first swear word. Being the youngest of 3, I picked them up quite early, trying to hide it from my parents, but I knew it, although badly. I mean, I don't know how else to go about it, really. Oh, I remember one time. I think it was in one of the Jaws films I was watching, or some film I watched when I was very little. There was somebody. I remember someone just going, "Oh shit," and I didn't always know it was a "who shit." Sounds like shit. I didn't realize it was a bad language, so I'd usually repeat it in front at the table, not knowing it was a bad naughty word. I go, and just being confused as to why my mum was smacking me.
For anyone who's listening out there who is much younger than us, yes, corporal punishment was a thing back then. Even I've been fretting with it myself. But that on a side point, I can see what you mean by that. I know for certain I've picked up quite a lot of words and lists in my lifetime, but at the time, particularly prior to 2001, 2000, I would argue, most of the language I was hearing was mostly kept at the sort of PG-12 level of things. In other words, shit is probably as far as I got prior to 2000, 1, until when I went to school. And this was in primary, and primary kids shouldn't be saying words like fuck or bitch or several other ones, but they were watching South Park and I wasn't. So you learn to pick up from your peers when you're around at the schoolyard, and obviously my parents obviously may slip in a word or two here and there that as you get older, you certainly know. Because my mother, she doesn't swear as much as my father, but she does use fuck whenever she's upset, or she uses it sarcastically. But at the same time, not only could I say those type of words, but I also couldn't use certain blasphemies because my mother was a bit more old school Catholic Christian in that respect, even though she doesn't really agree with the doctrine of the Catholic Church in terms of the misogyny behind it. But that's another story. So yes, it's mostly from the schoolyard. I must have heard these types of words. And then when you talk about cinema, when I heard the first fuck, weirdly enough, it was a movie called Orange County, which had Jack Black saying, "Oh, what the fuck, man?" That caught me a little while by surprise. And then I saw 8 Mile on DVD, much younger than when I was 15, and that had quite a few F's in it, some N's, and obviously shits, and cocks, and everything like that. So yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about it all along. Parental advisory music. Now, I take that back. That was the first time I've ever heard the F word, the N word, and other foul other words. The C word I didn't really hear in music that much, probably not at all, except when I first heard Sleaford Mods. And I was allowed to listen to parental advisory music. That wasn't really banned in our household, where I even got the debut album of Gorillaz on CD. And I must have been like 8 or something. I got it back at Lakeside in Thurrock. And I had Motherfucker. And fuck, that was used, and Law used the word ass. So yeah, I'm quite a badass in that regard. So bad language doesn't really bother me as much as for some people it would.
I remember, yeah, my brother was listening to Guns N' Roses when he was in his early teens, and I was like in my early primary school years, probably about 6, 7 or something like that. So of course, a lot of their songs were quite peppered with bad language and everything. The one that just reminds me mostly, it was of course the song "It's So Easy," and it goes, "I see you standing out. You think you're so cool. Why don't you just fuck off?" And so yeah, I mean, that's probably one of, well, I mean, I can't know if that's the first time I ever heard that word, but I mean, it's certainly one of the earliest memories of hearing swearing in music.
Okay, I'll take that. It's a little bit of an unusual one, but I kind of get that. I mean, they weren't really put as much on parental advisory stickers on albums in the 80s as they would in the 90s. Because if you saw a hip hop and a metal album, it always had that sticker on it. It wasn't really that big of a draw to me because I just took it as it's music. So I never really had the sort of restrictive nature about swearing in music as I did with, let's say, films, which I find always kind of ironic. I don't know if that is the same for you.
Well, I mean, yeah, we've got a parental advisory sticker, but that's about it. I mean, it doesn't stop them from it being sold to you. I always just found it weird. They have to be sort of like age ratings on films and video games, but music, books, comic books, and even like theatre productions don't. I mean, it's just
No, actually, I think there's a bit of a theory behind this because one could argue music's sort of a passive atmosphere. You're not actively listening to the music, you're just listening in the background, and it's playing to the side. So there was a case to be made for that as to why Britain, well, I know US was the country that started the RIAA system and PMRC. But in the UK, we never really had that sort of restricted nature, so to where you could have an 8-year-old me buying Gorillaz' debut album at Lakeside Ferg at a shop that was a bit like an HMV or a FOP, but it wasn't called that. I wish I knew the name, but I didn't. So yeah, that is a bit peculiar. And then the theatre thing, that's probably because of the class system, because mostly it's rich, educated people that do tend to go to see Julius Caesar or Titus Andronicus or the Romans in Britain, which I know got a lot of controversy because of a simulated gay rape, but that's another story. So yeah, well, growing up, it was mostly just hearing, at least in the isolated instances, probably not so much in the cinema because you can't see, 15 films unless you're 15. Was hearing F, shit, ass, damn, crap, asshole, that sort of thing. The C word was one that I just never really heard that much. And the first time I ever saw that word, weirdly enough, was when I was browsing on the BBFC website. Can you believe that? This must have been back like in 04 or something, or 03.
I can't really. I mean, I can't say when the first time I heard the C word actually in a film or anything. I mean, I'm just trying to think when the first time I heard the F-bomb at the cinema. I'm just trying to think because, I mean, not a lot of the 12-rate films that I saw at the cinema in my youth actually had it in them. So I think the first one I probably saw might have been Entrapment, actually, when Ving Rhames comes into this room with Sean Connery and says, "Hey, Mac, what does my Jaguar look like if you drove off a fucking cliff?" I think that's the first time I heard it actually at the cinema. Of course, later that same year, I saw my first 15 in South Park, and fucking hell, that
must have been a big leap.
Oh yeah, I'll never forget the first time I heard that Uncle Fucker song, and just because up until that point we never actually heard the word fuck actually mentioned by the South Park characters because it all been beeped out on TV and video, and of course this time we hear it and it's all completely and utterly uncensored. But of course, I mean, watch it on because now the episodes are all uncensored now anyway, apart from season 1. So yeah, that's good. Yeah, so that's obviously times have changed, and of course, I mean, whilst a South Park movie is quite still quite really strong, it's nothing in comparison to Sausage Party.
Well, I would agree with you on that assessment because Sausage Pie has 3 uses of the most offensive word in the English language. So yes, it does have slightly upper hand. But then again, there is an animation that takes it even further. It's as far as bad language is concerned. It's actually 2 words: modern toss, panty and stocking. Now, panty and stocking is probably the one out of the 2 anime that I'm aware of that uses the word that begins with rhymes with runt. It's said on an episode that parodies the movie Magnolia for some reason. I don't know why they parodied that. It's very obscure. And Modern Toss, that aired on Channel 4 back in the good old days, and that had that stubby character that's shaded in black called Alan, or the Monsieur Tourette's, that's his name. Like set on like the van, little signs there. It's funny, it's juvenile.
Well, I never watched it. I mean, my brother had a few of the comics for it. I always found that Mr. Tourette to be quite funny and everything. Really good. It says, "Could you paint my a sign for business, please?" Sure, absolutely. Fine. It's this like hiss wizard and everything. And he goes, "Oh dear, that's not what I want at all. What, you're some sort of cunt? There's someone paying."
No, but it makes it funny in some sense because it's with animation, particularly, especially for me. You don't expect that sort of material to appear, and when it does appear, it certainly raises your eyebrows and probably makes you want to copy it a little bit more than if it was a live action one, because if it's live action, it's probably slightly adult involved.
But obviously, nowadays, I mean, obviously, for the past 20 years, I mean, adult-oriented animation has become ever so prevalent and ubiquitous. So,
I would say so, especially on TV and streaming and through anime. But in the cinema, it's like, still quite a fringe.
Well, yeah, I mean, still got stuff like Big Mouth and Paradise PD and BoJack Horseman, Rick and Morty, and stuff like that. And they're just some of more bad language than others, but like Paradise PD and all the other things that are made by the same guy. Like, I can't remember what it's called now, but I'll just Google it. Paradise PD.
Well, to me, it's all sort of Adult Swim type of stuff. If I see
Bazaar. Yeah, Bazaar, which is also on Netflix, and it's just chock full of ridiculous amount of bad language and all kind of graphic material and everything. I mean, it is just like the kind of makes the kind of edgy stuff I would have grown up with look tame by comparison. It's unbelievable how far we've come.
I would agree with that on some assessment, because I've seen clips here and there of some of these types of Adult Swim type cartoons. That's why I call them anyways. It might as well be from the same company. They got silver tongues, I'll tell you that. I don't know if it's the word silver tongues or salty tongue. Salty tongue, I probably should have said, but yeah. Well, I mean, nowadays with Netflix and Prime Video, you can, people at one point in time, that sort of language you had to find on stuff like HBO and Showtime. Nowadays, it's pretty much anywhere. Almost as the same type of people who watch, let's say, Game of Thrones, or watch sort of regular TV station type stuff like The Big Bang Theory and Lucifer.
Alternatively, in Britain, you would probably watch it if you had satellite TV. You watch it on Sky. They'd have it. I mean, on terrestrial TV, Channel 4 was always a bit more looser with its attitudes towards bad language than BBC or ITV were. I remember, I'd watch during the 90s, the BBC wouldn't let you say fuck, whereas Channel 4 were. But of course, I don't think they wouldn't let you say cunt. Don't know if you're allowed to say cunt on TV. But yeah, then the turn of the millennium happened, and look, they did let you say that stuff. So yeah, I mean, it come this way now, because if you watch them on Channel 4, you're gonna hear pretty much everything. What I said? Was it BBC Three or something? I watched that, and yeah, which I think is what Frankie Boyle's New World Order is on, and bloody hell, yeah. It's no holds barred then. I mean,
but that's the thing that surprises me a little bit, because BBC has always been a little bit on the more, well, people say, it has got a liberal bias, but I've always found it a little bit more conservative than people make it out to be. My grandmother watches it.
More so than Channel 4, less so than ITV. That's always how I've seen it. It's always Channel 4 and later.
Yeah.
Channel 4 and later Channel 5 had always just left all the stuff in, and you'd watch something that was on one of their channels, especially after the Watershed, and yeah, they would not cut anything out.
No, and that's one of the charms I have with British television, because that was the television I grew up for most of my life. Um, we can get away with saying those types of naughty words after a certain time of the day and not get penalized for it. Although we do have Ofcom, who can often be the what's the word? Elephant in the room, or the straw that broke the camel's back. But
In
nowadays,
regards,
well, with people complaining, oh, there's this and that in this particular TV show, but in most cases, I don't really hear complaints about bad language because it's sort of a known thing. But let's say if you had that sort of thing on, let's say, Britain's Got Talent or X Factor, oh dear, because those are more family shows. But if it's something like Free Agents or um, Al Murray, I don't think people really going to give a shit.
well, as I mentioned, if it's on before the watershed, people will probably expect a bit more discretion used with use of language. When after the watershed, people expect that this is what's going to be, this is what going to well, it's going to contain. This is when you can just let loose with the let loose with the potty mouth. I mean, I've always noticed growing up. I mean, because we've always sort of made comments growing up how American TV outside of HBO or Showtime was well, I guess it was because it was heavily regulated by the FCC. It had a tendency just to insist on being squeaky clean. Like there was very little in the way of bad language or sexual references, or at least not to the extent that it was well, at least if any sort of sexual references were on there, they would be very, very mild. I mean, it's I mentioned a few in a previous podcast when back in 2002 I'd watched 24 one evening and Spooks another evening, or well, back I can't remember which one came first. And of course, whilst 24 being an American drama and Spooks being a British one, they're quite similar in themes and everything and tone. And of course, they're also very equal in terms of violence that's left on screen and everything. But when it comes to like bad language, the difference was there because 24's language was, well, as I mentioned, quite PG level, whereas Spooks actually would would actually let loose with some more which are harsher terms. I mean, most obviously was the word shit, which of course they would bandy around quite well, not recklessly, but I mean they would just they would say it quite liberally, and even on occasion, and it got more frequent as time went on, the use of fuck, which of course, I mean, the Fox network in America would never let you say.
No, you can't even say it on their sister channel FX, which I know aired stuff like The Shield and Damages, but even they're a bit prickly about profanity. A large part of it has to do with advertisers more so than the FCC, because when you're talking about cable television, if you show programs that would not appease advertisers very well, chances are your show is probably not going to be able to air on that surface for very long. And that's one of the problems I have with American television, is that it's been way too corporatized. And that a lot of the things that sort of bothers me is a lot of the irony surrounding it. So, in my opinion, because I've seen like an episode 2 of Archer, which is a spy cartoon for adults, compare that to Family Guy. Family Guy is very rude, sometimes gets very violent and quite nasty, even if it is within 15 circle. That's more offensive, in my opinion, Family Guy, than any Archer or what's that other one? Any of them would ever be. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Family Guy can be quite rude. It's certainly a lot ruder now than it was when it first started, where it did sound like it was really, really sort of playing it safe and everything. And then talking about adult cartoons. I mean, I mentioned again a previous podcast. I'm going to mention it again. That South Park episode, It Hits a Fan, where they first say shit.
TV.
I know we're going to be.
I remember that impersonation very well, where you said, they're going to say shit on TV. It was hilarious how you did it. But yeah, it seems quite silly.
They're going to say shit dude, you can't say shit on television. They're going to say shit on television. I can't do Hartman voice or a Stan voice anyway. Because that was back in 2002 as well, which ties it in with the whole Spooks and 24 thing I said earlier. And of course, I remember just thinking, what the hell? They can't say shit on American television because, again, going full circle, as a British millennial, an older millennial, so someone who grew up in Britain in the 90s, and I guess everyone who grew up in Britain did, we watched Bottom religiously because that was just like the #1 sitcom stuff. And I don't know how many episodes of Bottom you've watched, but I showed you that episode when we saw each other recently. How many times have I shit using that one? But anyway, they very liberally used the word shit. They didn't say fuck. I don't think the BBC allowed it back then. If done nowadays, they probably would just band it around. But of course, to me, that was always an example of American prudishness. I mean, never mind the attitude towards the naked breasts or anything, because that can neither here nor there as far as I'm concerned. I don't really care much for nudity in film nowadays anyway. But yeah, the attitude towards swearing was always a bit
finicky.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, and of course, like in comparison to the rest of Europe, we Brits are quite prudish in that turn because when it comes to film ratings, the rest of Europeans just don't give a crap, don't give a shit. I mean, like South Park and Sausage Party get freaking 12 equivalent ratings in most European countries.
No, but it is true. Actually, I've got a few points to make on that. South Park, Le Film, in France is actually one of the few films that passed 12 ans, which means no one under 12 can be admitted for language. It's actually very, 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 very unusual for a film to be higher than tout public or avertissement on the basis of vulgarity. So South Park and Sausage Party have that weird distinction of being one of the few films that got the 12 on the basis of its language, which I found quite funny. But yeah, like in Sweden and Denmark, it got like 11, which in my opinion, most 11-year-olds would find that hilarious anyway. So I guess it's kind of fitting there. And also, Denmark, for instance, they've done a film called Terke i Nib, or Turco in Trouble, the first CG animation for adults. So they're not going to be fazed by something with Eric Cartman cursing like a sailor and talking about he wants to kill Jews and respect my authority.
Sausage Party is the same, and 11 in Denmark, 12 in France, Sweden. It was a blah blah, 11, and Norway 12. I'm just going through IMDb as we talk about it. 16 in Germany, but hey ho.
Well, here's the funny thing. In France, Sausage Party was 12, and it got quite a bit of controversy by that through social Catholic groups. But it actually has a higher rating than Fritz the Cat.
Right. Well, I haven't seen Fritz the Cat. Well, I mean, to be honest, yes, I can, because I can imagine. I haven't seen Fritz the Cat, but I'm willing to guess that it's not as strong as like things like South Park or Sausage Party. I mean, I found out I can probably watch Fritz the Cat on YouTube, so I might give that a go because I'm very curious about that film, and I can't find it on a streaming platform. So
actually, it's the first anime film to have that kind of language, F words and racial slurs. But I think Fritz the Cat has a bit more issues going on, like there's cartoon sex, cartoon nudity, and drug use and rape even. So South Park, by comparison, seems a bit on the mild end, but I think part of the problem with South Park, probably even more so than Sausage Party, is that a lot of the language is used by children, and that makes people a bit uncomfortable when you put children into more adult situations. It's the whole Lolita taxi driver kick-ass thing all over again.
South Park was rated 7 in Sweden.
Oh. Go figure. Well, I know in the Netherlands they passed it at like 6. Well, I know we're talking.
It says 12 there.
Maybe it might
16 originally, then dropped to a 12. But then again,
maybe more in the earlier seasons. Because I've popped through Europe on a few occasions, but that's another story.
But like I say, I'm just. Oh wait. Oh, you mean early seasons? I was talking about the actual film.
But yeah, I'm talking about the TV show.
All right. Well, when I said it got past 7 in Sweden, I meant the actual film.
Oh, okay. Big along. Okay, I know what you mean. Sorry about that.
Yeah, but every time I've been speaking about South Park, mostly I've been talking about the film. Apart from that one time I spoke about that episode or anything, but yeah, I was yeah, talking about film. Also, while we're talking about South Park, I mean, there's they always say that they put in 399 swear words because one more would have got them an NC-17 from the MPAA, but it's like that can't be true because there's loads more films out there that have got way more swear words in that and got away with uncut R ratings. So how does that work?
I thought the same thing too. I mean, when you look at a lot of the Martin Scorsese films like Casino and Goodfellas, they are vulgar. Like Pulp Fiction, they're all 18
Yeah, and
anyway.
Tarantino films.
But
Yeah, I
I
think they're more 18
guess
for violence though.
no, that is true, and drug use and a few other things. But I think on South Park's case, it's based on a TV show. It was animated. I think that probably scared the MPAA probably a little bit more than a live action film that's probably not going to be seen by anyone under the age of 14 or 16 if they're watching behind their mother's back. Animation, we've said this time and time again, kids will watch it anyways. I saw Elfen Lied at 14. I saw maybe it was Akira, probably saw that at 12.
Yeah, we're talking about anime. We can always bring up the fact that, of course, manga entertainment, because we're talking about like a animation that's aimed at adults anyway. Manga Entertainment, who did most of the Western distribution of these Japanese anime. That's what anime films, of course, because they wanted to lean into the more adult orientated image of it. Had that 15 practice, if you remember.
Oh yes, I've heard about 15ing. Maybe it was a little bit before my time because I didn't start getting into anime until '06. But I am aware of the phenomenon because I used to read an encyclopedia that was called the Anime Encyclopedia by Helen McCarthy, and they used to say about they were just putting all these F words and shits just to try to bump the rating up, which I find a little bit cynical because some works probably don't deserve it, like Pat Labor and Robotech, but the more adult stuff like Madball 34 and Genocide probably would benefit from a bit of a bump up in terms of the profanity. I mean, who's going to be watching it?
Yeah, but those ones arguably didn't need it though, because the level of violence and all that stuff in it meant it was lucky to even get away with 15.
Exactly. I think. Well, I've seen the Battle Angel OVA that ultimately James Cameron and stuff would produce and remake it to Alita Battle Angel. I think that had a few uses of Fs. I can remember.
I've not seen it, so I cannot comment.
Oh, it's on YouTube for free. It's actually much better than that CG motion capture stuff it made years later. But
I don't fucking doubt that it is. I've only ever commented on that film just because I couldn't believe how much violence they let go at PG-13 and 12A.
This one, I know we're a bit off topic here, but yeah, that one I sort of didn't see eye to eye on you. Maybe it's probably because I was too distracted by how beautiful that character looked with the big anime eyes. Looks a bit unreal. For someone I like to keep as my Daki Makora to the side. Shh, mustn't tell. But I was going to sort of reel it back in.
Yeah, I think we'll sort of
and
probably worth ignoring
about the most profane film you've ever seen. Because for me, it's Rise of the Foot Soldier.
I mean,
I haven't seen that. It's the most foul-mouthed film I've ever seen.
I recently sat down and watched, well, not too recently, but I did see Uncut Gems not that long ago, which is like in the top 3 for most uses of the F, most uses of fuck throughout a movie.
That's a 15, which one would think, Wolf on Wall Street, because that was 18, and also it's the sex and the drugs, and I had about 500 uses. Drugs.
Yeah, that's about more of a drugs than anything. Oh yeah, Wolf of Wall Street, I saw that as well. Then again, there's always Nick Love films I see because while they may not have any F-bombs, they sure as hell make up for it with Country Matters. And they just basically, because being British films and made by a regular salt of the earth British person, I like to think he is. Yeah, they do speak more like we do over here, which Americans likely don't. Because Americans have basically mentioned how us Brits do tend to throw that word around almost like it's a punctuation mark. I mean, I don't know if we do, but yeah, we do say it probably a bit more around a bit more liberally than they do.
Well, compared to the Australians, we seem to be even mild by comparison there. I think a large part of it is cultural mistranslation, but growing up, I thought that word was just a very bad word. You just never said to others. You could probably even say fuck. You probably can't say cunt. But when I got reading into it and noticed it was a slur for female genitalia, that's when I thought, okay, I probably have to be a little bit careful on this.
Right,
I think that's one of the problem is because they assume it's something to do with sexual organs. But at the same time, people call each other dickheads and pricks all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page for list of films that most frequently use the word fuck. In terms of the most uses of a word, there's a SwearNet the movie. I don't know what.
Can I hold you
one is a doc
for a second? Because SwearNet is actually the only NC-17 film I'm aware of that got it on the basis of language, as well as some other bits of sex and nudity, but language was one of the key issues. Yes. Can you believe that? And that came out like in 2014, 2015. It's from Canada. But they thought to try to push the censor's buttons, and it worked this time.
Fair play. They should be wearing that like a badge of honor, though, shouldn't they? That NC-17.
Easily, but in Canada, it got like a Canadian R in like Ontario,
that's the same thing,
so it's done its job.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, last time I checked, it's the same thing. All the equipment, but then of course it's a documentary called Buck. Then it's Wolf of Wall Street. Then it's Uncut Gems. So Uncut Gems in fourth place in terms of most F-bombs in a film.
I find it hilarious, but also a little bit bizarre at the same time, really. I mean, well, I get Wolf on Wall Street because that was about 3 hours long, even though it really didn't need to be. But because I've wrote scripts before, and the most uses of that word I've ever put in was like about 84. To do like 500, 400 uses of fuck, that's impossible for me. I find it hilarious. And then, like I said, that documentary that you said, it rhymes with muck. I love that film, by the way. It's actually
I've not seen it.
Remember seeing it on YouTube years ago, and I even aired it on television when I was in the States. And if you're a fan of the film, this film is not yet rated, you will certainly like that movie that rhymes with muck. It's a great film, but yes, it's quite vulgar. And there's also a scene where you see people actually doing it at a concert. It's actually, if you type in on BBFC, it's listed as in the adult section, in the same area as Mission and of Darkness, Alien of Darkness, and Sex and Zen, Extreme Ecstasy. So just put your content filter and you'll trust where I'm coming from on this. And the movie Fuck for Forest. Well, actually, thinking about it, you want to talk about swear words in movie titles? Because you remember Meet the Fuckers?
Oh, Meet the Fockers, yeah. I saw that.
I remember seeing that too at the cinema. I thought, I wanted to be a bit of a bad boy and go see a movie that sounded like they were saying a certain swear word. And I still to this day, was quite surprised that it did get a 12A, despite how many uses of that word sounding like that word. And I think this may be urban legend or so, but Meet the Parents was originally going to get an R rating because that word sounded a little too close to fuck. But until they actually submitted like a report from the census or someone's birth certificate saying there's actually someone with that surname who lives in America or like New York or somewhere, and they decided to give it PG-13 on that basis, which I've never heard of such a thing like that in my life. But it does show that on rare occasions, the MPA doesn't have to be so nanny state.
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So
Well,
just
yeah, I mean, well, I can sure. I mean, I don't think there's any indication here that I ever got anything out of any that it was going to risk anything higher than a 12, because in the end of the day, I think the BBFC actually understood that nuance.
they did too. They probably just considered it as wordplay, which sometimes you can even get in UMPG films, like what the frig nod that was used on Monsters vs Aliens. That was PG. I think there was even a short that was from Madagascar, the cartoon, not the country, that aired before Wallace and Gromit Custer the Were-Rabbit. That was given a U certificate, and that said wordplay on the BBFC consumer advice at the time, which I always thought, wordplay? You mean like, oh shit, or holy crab, or buckle flugger? There's actually an island that's not too far from the Orkney and Shetland Islands called Muckle Flugger. It doesn't sound a little like that word. That sounds a bit Oedipal.
Sorry, sounds a bit like what?
Sounds a bit Oedipal. Oedipus. You know, someone who sleeps with their mother.
Oh, motherfucker, right.
Yeah. Now, that's one of those words I don't really like using in polite company because that's just nasty. Incest.
BBFC,
No.
the BBFC don't like I've seen them hang ups to it, and that they don't let you use it at 12A unless with exception of Gemini Man, where they did allow it due to the context and that it wasn't actually aggressive or directed at anyone. But I still think that's something they've got to get over with. I was because I was thinking about how certain films recently have been downgraded from 15 to 12, and of course you've got Rocky Horror Picture Show, you've got Blazing Saddles. Okay, there's not much in them that's particularly offensive. But and there's Life of Brian, which has 6 uses of fuck, although I've only heard 5, so I don't know about that. But of course it's got like the 2 uses full frontal nudity scene. So I was like, well, I was wondering if the Blues Brothers could be downgraded to a 12 as well, because that's a very tame film. I mean, that's got 9 F-bombs in it throughout the entire movie. But then again, and of course there's nothing else in there that could actually consider it to be that could make it even any worse.
Well,
I mean, sorry, but there's nothing in there that could really irk anyone. But then again, I noticed that one of the F-bombs was a mother F-bomb. So I was thinking, oh, they're probably not going to let it have a 12A under that circumstance, which is a bit silly because, again, as I've mentioned, The Blues Brothers is a very tame, fit, and mild film. Considering when it came out back in 1980, it came out the same year as Friday the 13th. And, of course, in America, because you can't release anything with an X or NC-17 rating, both Blues Brothers and Friday the 13th were in the same category.
I know, that was always a bit unusual to me. I think they got so much complaints about Friday the 13th being R-rated, at least from parents then, saying it's just too violent or too sexual, to where I'm sure they probably had to tighten the grip on some of the violence in the sequels that came out after it. This may be urban legend, but take my word for it. Now, Blues Brothers, I haven't, I saw that film much later than when I was like 15 or 17, but I will agree with you, it is quite vanilla. I mean, it's probably a lot more vanilla than Life of Brian, which has that issue with the blasphemy and the nudity and other things that would likely irk more or less mainstream America than Blues Brothers. Blues Brothers, even your grandmother's probably watched it. It's like Saturday Night Fever. Most people, that's an R-rated film most people have seen and sort of know and can sort of get behind. Now, I know Saturday Night Fever had a bit of controversy on its end in both countries because of the C word and other sort of offensive language and racism and stuff, to where it got X or 18 and then it was R-rated, to where they had to release a PG version when they realized more people wanted to see it because they wanted to see all the dancing and all the cool shit. you when you get people who talk about Saturday Night Fever, you would always assume that, wait, is this like a movie that the whole family can enjoy? But when you actually put it on, it's the uncut version. You'll be like, oh, I don't know. Was this like with your parents? Because they probably saw it when they were young or of adult age. Did they see the PG or the X version?
I'm going to assume they would have seen the they would have seen probably the X version. I mean, well, actually, I don't know if they would have gone out to see it anyway because they would have already had a kid by that point, so they probably wouldn't have been able to go see it. Time to go see it, but
Oh yeah, you do
yeah,
got older
I mean,
siblings.
yeah, I mean, blimey, the A-rated version at the time had like 10 minutes of footage removed. I mean, obviously that was done stateside preemptively, but still, I mean, also it was released in 2013. It was still an 18. I'm just trying to think if it really deserved its for. Really
Well,
think it deserved it. So things very strongly. Well, it's hardly a reason to fucking make it a goddamn.
well, for me,
18.
I'm sort of fine with films with excessive use of bad language being 18s.
Not me.
Especially it depends on the source subject. Like if it's a crime movie with Guy Ritchie, it's about British Cockney gangsters. 18 is pretty much the only point of entry you can go. When I see a British gangster film as a 15, it sort of confuses me a little bit. Like, what? I mean, even Leia
Yeah, but I
Kate
think
being a
those.
15
I think.
was too much.
I think those. Yeah, but those gangster films probably get 18s more for their violent content rather than anything else. I mean, to me, it's like. Sorry, what was I going to say? I don't think I would accept a film being rated 18 for simply for language alone. I mean, it has to have something else in there to make it more warrant it. Those sort of gangster films, especially the Nick Love ones, do have a lot of like adult content, like all the violence and everything, and maybe excessive drug abuse and everything, which would push it in, which is more justifiable for that sort of rating rather than just use of a naughty words.
Oh no, well I get that. I mean, it's a combination of issues, but it does sort of make me scratch my head a little bit when I do see a British gangster film that's a 15 because it means it's a bit on the soft side or it's not going to appeal to the type of people who actually want to see, who live in Dagenham or Essex and Watford who think they're so hard. And they go down the pub and bash people's heads in on a Friday night. And they call people wogs and all that stuff. Oy. Anyways, but yes, probably another case, maybe this is not, it is kind of a Guy Ritchie type movie, but it's not. It's called Dom Hemingway. You bloody old gays, Dom Hemingway is a top right nutter. That should not have been a 15. And it's not for the violence, but it's actually because in the first 2 minutes, you actually see him receive fellatio in a prison cell. He's talking quite explicitly about how his cock feels exclusive, or how his cock feels like the fire of 10 tigers and animals. He rides like a machine. That was so overt. I was wondering, what am I watching here? Have you seen Dom Hemingway? You probably would know what I'm talking about.
Don't think I have, to be honest.
Well, it's got 9 uses of the C word. It's got fellatio, same-sex fellatio, and he's talking about his penis and how great it is, doing the first 2 minutes of the film, and quite, bits of drug use and just chaos throughout. That I thought the BBFC must have really slept at the wheel on this, because years ago they would have passed a movie like that in 18 based on the language and the sexual content. So yeah, that caught me a little by surprise.
The use of fuck. I'm looking at the content on the parents' guide on IMDb. 100 use of fuck, 10 uses of, or almost always directed at men, as is common in the UK. One of these, well, yeah, stuff like that. Well, fair. Well, I will say fair play to them that they would let something like that go at 15. It does show that they are like cooling off. They are like becoming more liberal. They are, well, you could say, yeah, they're growing up a bit. They're like not pandering to pearl-clutching moral guardians. I know they have abandoned that reputation for quite some time ago, but they're cutting it off less and less. I mean, it's nice to know that they will liberalize, because as I've always said, and I will stand by this, the more they let go at 15, the better.
Well, on a surface level, you could be right on this, because Australia, quite a few 18 films have been past MA15 down under. You know how a lot of British people like to go down to Australia for better employment and weather. And in Canada, a lot of them can be 14A. And in America,
No,
the R rating.
That's technically their equivalent of a 12A as well. So when you think about it, because it's the next step up from PG.
This is true, but I always view 14A films as more or less like mild, moderate level R-rated fare, which in of itself, you can have even films as profane as The Gentleman, even past the 14A category, depending on which province you're in. I know The Gentleman is one of the most foul-mouthed movies I've seen in a cinema. So I didn't see Football Factory and Rise of the Good, but I did see Gentleman. And that movie's very vulgar and also quite racist. Take that as you will.
I think the racist language might have irked them a bit more, to be honest. Yes, of course, like how the language is used is always going to be is always going to affect its rating. I mean, like I said, films like South Park, Sausage Party, and American Pie are going to be treated a lot more leniently, at least by the BBFC, maybe not so much by the MPAA, because they are very humorous. I've always said it seems like the BBFC does have a better sense of humor than the MPAA, because when you start saying swear words and sexual references and rude gestures in a comedic tone, they'll let it go.
Depends on the issue, really. I mean, Scary Movie 3 and 4 and 5, they were 15s in the UK, and those movies were quite randy and rude at places.
True.
Even at PG-13. I know.
And of course, the first two, which were R-rated, were 18 years. So maybe you may be right, but I mean, again, I've mentioned those previous three films. In fact, most of all the theatrical American Pie films, which have had, to the best of my knowledge, had to be cut to avoid NC-17 ratings, have, even in those NC-17 ratings, been rated 15 here without any issues. Team America World Police is another one.
Well, we know about the puppet love scene.
But again, I can also bring up The Due, which has 5 audible F-bombs in, which again, 12A here, R in America, and then again, Fighting with My Family, which doesn't so much contain what we call swearing, just just rude language and sexual references, which again, fully uncut 12A in Britain, and having to be cut stateside to avoid an R rating. Which also the same can be said for Dodgeball.
Nope, that is true, because when I saw the version, because I was in the UK at the time, I had 2 uses of fuck. But when you watch the US cut, actually I've never seen the US cut, because I've only seen like TV versions of it. But yes, the cinema version in the US was only 1 use, and I think it's the bit where he says, fucking Chuck Norris. Where Ben Stiller's character is fat. Oh, so I probably gave spoilers away, but I think most people have seen it. Actually,
Chuck Norris.
One of the first 15 films I ever owned on DVD. I know I go on about Ghost in the Shell, but I keep thinking it's probably that or The Matrix as far as owning the DVD is concerned. Dodgeball. Oh. Strange world. I always preferred that movie over Anchorman. Anchorman, God. I can't stand that movie. My father's obsessed with it.
It's an alright film. It's not a funny film. I saw it at the cinema and I thought it was okay. I think a lot of Will Ferrell's humor just doesn't really connect with me very well, because I watch a lot of films he's in. It's like, is this? I know this is kind of funny, but it's not making me laugh. It's not like I don't think he's funny. I just don't think his brand of humor really connects me as well as, like, say, Jim Carrey or
Rick Mayall.
But well, obviously Rick Mayall goes without saying. To be fair, I don't find Robin Williams to be that particularly funny, even though he is actually a funny man. Well, just or the likes of Parker and Stone or something, or Leslie Nielsen or something. Well, actually, Leslie Nielsen's actually not a comedian, but I mean, I could go on for minutes. But something about or Kevin Smith or something. His form of humor always makes you laugh. So yeah.
Well, weirdly enough, you
Well, I
said
mean,
Kevin
make of that
Smith.
what you will.
Clerks, the first one, was given NC-17 at first because of language, but thankfully, due to the power of the man who we are not allowed to talk about, his name rhymes with Firestein,
Yeah, I
and
know
his
who you
lawyer,
mean. I
Alan
mean,
Dershowitz, they managed to pass it. Weirdly enough, Harvey had a funny way of getting stuff past the envelope that no one else could because of his connections, which came at the price of many women who felt like they were being exploited. But
well, loads of
yikes.
well, I mean, they've always talked about the MPAA, how it's clearly embedded with big studios because, and again, we're talking about bringing up South Park again. Parker and Stone have said when they're making Orgasmo, they took it to them, got an NC-17, is like, well, we want an R, not an NC-17. What can we remove to get it down to an R? I said, no, I can't tell you that, I'm afraid, because that would make us look like a censorship board. We're gonna have to just change it and hope we can get an R rating. It's like, well, that's not very there. I mean, there's no help. I don't know what to do. Plus, we haven't got any money left to actually edit the damn to make these edits. Where, of course, when they did South Park movie, which had what was it, Paramount behind it? I think it was Paramount.
Paramount in the US, Warner Brothers in the UK.
Yeah, well, we're talking about the US and everything because they would have had a production company. Yeah, Paramount pitch. Oh yeah, I wonder what that's all about. Anyway, never mind. They said that when they were getting an NC-17. I mean, the head of one of the big studio execs of Paramount rang up the MPAA and just said, "Look, we can't release this with an NC-17. It has to have an R. What can we do?" And they just basically gave them
Laundry list.
a laundry list, yeah, also with intricate detail of what they had to remove in order to get it down to an R rating. Yeah, I mean, just double standard much, but I mean, that's one thing you say about the BBFC. I mean, they will tell a film producer if they want to get down to a lower rating what it is that they need to cut verbatim in intrinsic detail. If, of course, the film could be cut for a lower rating.
No, but it is true. I would say nowadays BBFC is not class discriminatory when it comes to if filmmakers want to get a lower rating or not. I think a large part of the problem is that there's been rumors about MPA discriminating against independent filmmakers and those who probably don't have the kind of budgets that Warner Brothers and Universal have, to where they are more penalized a lot more than the others. That's probably why Asteroid City, which had a brief scene of Scarlett Johansson naked, managed to get away with a PG-13 after an appeal was done to reject its R rating to get the PG-13. But Infinity Pool, which was produced by a smaller company called Neon, at least in the US market, they had to stick with the NC-17 for that uncut version and then have to ultimately cut and trim the offending bits to get the R rating, which I just think is absolute crass. I mean, I
And of course, it's
know
not
how you
like
got
Asteroid.
Furman, but
It's not like Asteroid City had any problems over here with its 12A rating. It would pass through without a blink of an eye.
absolutely. I mean, I was happy for it. It did remind me of the days of Titanic, where a 12 film could get away with sort of quite a bit of skin that you probably can't even see nowadays. Do you know a lot of 12 films that got a lot of full frontal or even boobs?
Well, nowadays, no, because they don't generally do it. I mean, we could talk about like the films that have been downgraded to an R 12A rated, like Life of Brian. There's also 16 Candles has been uncut 12A. Has got some. There's Airplane, which is a 12A now, but PG before has got tits in. I don't know. I mean, this is off topic anyway. We're supposed to be talking about swearing, but
Sorry, my bad. No, I just wanted to sort of speak my mind on that. But you know how you go on about Furman? I feel that way
Uh,
sometimes about Joan Graves and Dan Glickman, who were the faces of the MPAA for a very long time until when they had a change of powers that be. I wish I knew who the head honcho's name is at Motion Picture Association, but I don't. So I'm going to be very much penalized by our fans listening to this right now. Now, on the flip side, let's talk about some of the more junior categories, like your UG and PG stuff. You know, you look at some of the U films back in the day, they could get away with quite a bit of naughty words. I mean, E.T. is probably the big offender here. I would have never thought you could say penis breath or shit.
oh Christ, fuck yeah, you are so right. Fuck now. How did I forget that? I did. Yeah, E.T. is like the worst example of like swearing, because obviously you look at that film and it's not had that. It's had a PG rating in most other countries. Obviously, it's a PG in America. That probably goes without saying. I'm just looking it up as well now on IMDb as we speak. Yeah, I know original rating G in Australia, but upgraded to PG in 2002. Oh no, Canada. Well, PG in Manitoba. G in British Columbia, originally a G in Nova Scotia, originally a PG in Ontario, but been re-rated to PG in Nova Scotia. I'm probably boring a fuck up anyone listening. Generally speaking, from 2002 onwards, it's been a PG, being G in Saskatchewan and G in Quebec. Well, I mean, okay, but obviously you can appreciate, PG in America, but then again, you're probably expecting such a thing. But yeah, I mean, I remember I sat down and watched it recently. It was the first time I'd seen it, and I don't know how long, so I couldn't remember and stuff. Yeah, but when Elliot just yells "penis breath" at the top of his lungs, like, what the BBFC thinking? And it's like, you audibly hear the word shit, and then you one point someone says douchebag. It's like, how the fuck did this get away with a U rating? I didn't think you could swear at all. I mean, this is.
No, but that
language. I'm not. Sorry, I'm not quite finished. Language-wise, this is more egregious than the single use of "piss off" in Watership Down. Let's face it, we're not really focusing on that when it comes to Watership Down's U rating now, are we?
No, it's the violence and gore that's always tries to stick into people's minds.
Oh yeah, and just the sheer horror of it, because it is not a light-hearted film.
No. I've heard reports about people of, I don't know, maybe not your generation, but like Gen X kids who were terrified and had to hide in their rooms after seeing that because that movie scarred them as children in the same way that Neverending Story Return to Oz did. So if you could do that to someone, and that was a U certificate back in the age of Furman, you got to wonder a little bit. And like we said on past, Mary Whitehouse didn't really raise a complaint about she always went on the X stuff. So yeah, that's always
which
a very
which shows how full of shit she was, and really it did not come down to protecting children. It came down to telling us grown-ups what we could and couldn't watch.
Exactly there. I mean, she should have been even on the campaign against stopping people from smoking in schools because teachers could puff away near the kids or beat them with a cane. But no, silence.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Mary Whitehouse. We're going to be starting that woman. We'll be here all day. I mean, this is a woman who was like offended by the word knickers on television and had a grievance with "Till Death Do Us Part" for the overuse of the word bloody. A word which you wouldn't even bat an eye if you did hear it in a U-rated film nowadays. I mean, if she was to hear a skit from Frankie Boyle or Jimmy Carr, oh my god,
she'd have a heart attack.
No, it's like when Jimmy Carr made that joke where he says, "How do you make a gay fuck a woman? Shit in her cunt."
No, she would roll in her grave if she heard some of the language that passes through nowadays. Probably even some kids' movies and stuff as well. Well, point. I'm stretching my definition of kids' movies, like stuff like Good Boys and Strays and Sausage Party.
Well, that's obviously not a kids' movie, really, is it? Because it's not rated for kids. I mean, most kids' movies will probably put a little swear word in because they want a PG rating on both sides of the Atlantic. So, of course, they get it to bump it up. They put the mildest swear in, like crap or bugger or something like that. What's been frustrating is sometimes they'll put it in stateside to make sure it gets a PG rather than a G. Then it comes over here and they cut it out just to get a U rating. It's like, why would you do that? Just take the PG rating and have be in the same category as Frozen. No one sees a PG nowadays and is perturbed by it because all the cool shit's going to be at 12A.
I wanted the same thing too. On sort of children's film end of things. Although, it's going without saying, if Paw Patrol 2, which is coming out in cinemas soon, could be PG stateside, then I guess the G rating is dead on the grave, because Paw Patrol is the sort of word that appeals to like 4 and 5-year-olds. It's like preschool level. How wrong is that?
Well, I mean, sorry, what was Paw Patrol's U rated, and what's it in America?
This new movie that they're doing for Paw Patrol is PG.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do know about the new Paw Patrol movie. I've seen about it on BBFC website. Well, what's the hang up?
It's because Paw Patrol appeals to very young children. It airs on Nick Jr. It's aimed at a slightly younger audience than SpongeBob. So I was just instantly confused by that, So where, we've talked about earlier on, the G rating has no purpose or existence in this world anymore. Might as well just be dead. I'm afraid.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I mean, we talk about like we talk about how the NC-17 in America is practically dead, but you've also like got to think: could the same be said for the G? It's almost like we've only got 3 ratings, like we had back in Britain prior to 1970. It's almost like back when we like the PG is the U rating, the PG-13 is the A rating, and the R rating is the X rating. But to be honest, U and 18 over here are such outliers now. You could just say the same with PG, 12A, and 15. But again, off topic. So I mean, we're going to talk about
audiences appreciate us going off in tangents a little bit, as long as we at least explain ourselves. But language-wise, there are some G-rated films that do get away with a bit. I remember I said Cars earlier on. Well, as it turns out, the BBFC probably overread into some of the profanity a bit, and they thought they heard the word piss, or the word piston was a euphemism for piss. And that's what pushed a film that was G-rated in the States to PG, as well as also 2 uses of the word hillbilly hell. But hell, for some reason, is considered a U-level word. But I never viewed it as a U-level word because I got into trouble for saying that in school and with my parents.
What to say about? I mean, the BBFC aren't your parents, and they're not your teachers. Okay, I mean they're regular everyday people. Sure, they're going to have limits to what you can say, but they're going to probably think things are justified by context, which your parents and your teachers probably aren't. We're talking. If we go about PG, it does seem weird how back in the 80s, the Americans could have a singular F-bomb, or sometimes anyway, in a PG-rated film like Beetlejuice and Big and I can't remember the other ones, but I know those two, which of course wasn't be allowed in the PG over here, hence why Beetlejuice was a 15, well, and for other reasons, and Big had to have it cut out to get its PG. But then again, you sort of like see then later on they only got used to their PG-13. It's like, well, actually they completely clamped down on what language not only is PG, but you can see the PG-13. We watched Men in Black recently, and while the 2 uses of the word prick were cut out from the PG-rated version in Britain, nothing else was.
No, but that is true. I've always found that a little bit particular because I don't think people think prick is perhaps any more offensive than probably
Shit.
shit or asshole.
Well,
Son of a
maybe
bitch.
arsehole, but shit and dick and everything. And of course, you know that word is shit is thrown around with quite frequently in that movie. I mean, at the end, Will Smith goes, "Oh, this word's hard on my weird shit-o-meter." Oh, apparently it's 12 uses the word shit.
No,
What?
you're absolutely right. I mean, I got into a little bit of trouble for watching that film when I first did, back in '97. My mother was a little bit concerned that some of the language was probably a little too much at a person at that age, but her and my father ultimately sort of relaxed a little bit, and they realized I liked the movie because of the sci-fi stuff and Linda Fiorito, and also all the comical musings. Just the language and some of the sci-fi violence and gore sort of subsided, and they let me enjoy it as it was with the VHS copy that I remember very fondly because I also had a coupon for Domino's Pizza. So that was one of my first introductions, at least I was concerned, to sort of profanity in your face in a film growing up. And that also went alongside Ants, which was an animated film that probably feels more adult than it probably was marketed to anyways. And that had quite a
But
few uses of
it was
hell,
meant to,
damn, ass, and even one
well,
use of
again,
dick.
it was the more grown-up version of Bug's Life. Hence why it was PG as opposed to U or G, where Bug's Life was on the other was on both sides of Atlantic. I mean, all the little kids wanted to see Bug's Life back then. I suppose you might have done when you were a kid because you would have been 5 or 6 when it came out.
I
I
saw
was
both
13, 14,
films
well, 13, and I
at the
wanted to see
cinema.
Ants because it was aimed at a more grown-up age. Also, I've also read about. Have you seen Memoirs of an Invisible Man?
No, I haven't. But you told me
Right.
on the side that that movie had quite a bit of swearing and sexual humor
Yeah.
for a PG.
Yeah. I mean, the word, yeah, the F bomb was cut out, but everything else was left in. And it's like, wow, this has got a lot of swearing because again, shit is thrown around quite a lot. There's a used the term dickwad is also used, and there's a reference towards cutting someone's testicles off, which is like really surprised because I was 7 when I went to see that at the cinema, to the best of my memory, and it's like I know my dad didn't have any objections to it, so it's like well, I mean, you're just kind of well, it just makes you think of it, day. But again, I mean, again, you'd think like the violence, people should be more concerned about violence or maybe the sexual stuff rather than just bad language. As again, no one outside of Britain and America seems to care too much about.
No, but it is true. I mean, in the grander scheme of things, if there's violence or there's stuff in it that's too disturbing or controversial, I will sort of draw the line. And I don't have children, but I've got a grandmother, I've got a mother, and certain stuff that appears in films I don't want them to see. If there's a rape scene, she's not watching it. Nope. But yes, I know. I kind of get what you mean. I know PG films back then they used to get with quite a bit more swearing than they do now. I mean, the most recent film I can think of that go with quite a salty tongue. Um, I know I've said Simpsons movie that caught me by surprise. Not just because of that scene where you see Bart being naked on a skateboard. That's another story. But there's a scene where he does the middle finger gesture, which I thought, wow, I didn't know you could get with that kind of language in a PG film. But guess you can, because the year before, and because my memory was quite short, the Mr. Bean movie I saw at Kids Club, Bean Ultimate Disaster movie from '97. I saw that at Kids Club back in '06. And there's a scene where, they're driving through Los Angeles and he's doing the middle finger in the air, not
Yeah.
knowing it's obscene. I thought that was hilarious, but I thought, yeah, that's a bit rude. You can never get away with that in a PG nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I saw that new Ninja Turtles film that came out recently.
Oh, yeah.
That has the word piss in it twice, I think. That's
Wow.
PG rated.
Yeah, it's a bit on the vulgar side for essentially what is a kids movie based on the franchise that plays on like Nickelodeon and stuff. So I guess I know they said that about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. There was like someone saying, "Oh, you just pissed off the wrong man" or something. Maybe I misheard it. Oh, how can I forget? On a kid's level, Paranorman had the word jackass, which is also the name of a stupid ass TV series, but that was a word I would not have expected to appear in a kids movie. Isle of Dogs had son of a bitch, and then Hidden Figures, which is more for adults. That's not really a kids film. It had bastard and also some racial dialogue like Negro and stuff like that. So I guess at PG you can slip up every now and again, which makes me happy.
Well, I mean,
it reminds me of the old school stuff.
you have to like have something in there to differentiate PG from U or G. So you can't, drop too many monocles or clutch too many pearls when you hear a word like that. Obviously when you hear, I mean, we're not going to hear the word penis breath or anything in a freaking U-rated film again anytime soon. I don't think we should. But again, I don't know how to really finish that sentence. But I mean, yeah, I know the PG is pretty much the new U or G rating, but you have to like understand that it's not. So you have to have something in there. But because 12A and PG-13 are pretty much rendered PG almost meaningless, we just now associate it with freaking kids movies like Frozen.
Exactly. I mean, it's lost a lot of its power, really. Back in our good old days, I know we sound like old geezers saying this, it used to mean quite a bit. We said with the mask, if you saw that yellow triangle on there, you took it seriously. Now, which reminds me a little bit, because I kind of forgot this, at the U level, Space Jam New Legacy, which I kind of forgot about this, but that movie did have quite a bit of profanity for a U certificate. I actually had a bleeped use of a word. You couldn't make out what they said, but it was bleeped out. And there was about 2 or 3 uses of hell.
Oh, yeah, I suppose. I mean, I just watched it recently or anything. I actually watched it last week. God, it's a really bad film. But I mean, I don't know. According to IMDb, 4 uses of damn, 2 uses of hell, and sequels where obscured implied coarse language is heard by a long bleep. Well, that takes. Because that just makes.
Everywhere else it got a PG equivalent, but in UK they actually were quite relaxed about it. They gave it a U certificate. I would have thought because that bleeped use of language, they would have bumped it at least to PG. Because I know, unlike other countries, the BBFC is actually kind of strict about even implied or bad language that's bleeped out, to where they'll even push it up to 12A just because, the F word was bleeped out, even though it was bleeped out, but you could still tell they said.
Which film was this?
It's not Space Jam New Legacy, but I think it was Justin Bieber's Believe or Step Up, one of those stupid ass musical dance films that's popular with the young girls.
Well, I do remember. Have you seen the film Galaxy Quest?
I've seen it at the cinema. I know it quite well. That one is quite salty for a PG film.
Well, nonetheless, I mean, it was a PG film, but there is one bit where Sigourney Weaver's character said, basically goes, "Well, screw that." It's like, yeah, that's not what she said. Basically, yeah. I mean, she really said "fuck that," but they wanted a PG rating, so they ADR'd in over Gru, and on both sides of the Atlantic, it managed to get a PG rating. However, the BBFC have re-rated it, and because they've realised that she was actually saying "fuck," and you can make out she was trying to say "fuck," they just upped it to a 12A. It's like, really? I mean, that just defies the whole point of them, like dubbing it over. If you're just going to do that anyway, but I digress. I mean,
I'm not a big fan of the BBFC upping ratings simply because of implied or bleep language. It sort of takes away from the fact that the actual word itself is probably more offensive than any sort of bleep use ever will be. I mean, there was a movie called Motherhood, which had Uma Thurman. I was a 15 because it looked as though she was mouthing the C word while she was like in traffic or something. She was like mouthed use of the C word should not push a film at 15. That sounds a bit ridiculous to me.
What? I mean, things I don't know where I stand on that because ultimately, if it's obvious that they were saying it, I mean, you've already said that you're not going to be allowed to see that at not allowed to say that at 12A. But I don't know what to make of that. Of course, I've just been reminded of that Selena Gomez film, My Mind and Me.
I heard about it being R in the US, but 12A here.
Yeah,
What's
it's
the
got 10
story on it?
fucks in it.
Oh. Yeah, that's awfully much for a 12. I don't know how I feel about that.
The word, occasional coarse, it's been classed as mild on IMDb because occasional coarse language, the word fuck is used 10 times and the word shit can be briefly heard in song lyrics. I mean, again, it's a documentary and everything. It's not actually a film, so maybe they just came down softer on it. I can understand why. I mean, I'm not really going to give them too much flack over that. It's good to show that the BBFC they can understand nuance when it comes down to it. I mean, again, we've both acknowledged that both the BBFC and the MPAA are, in comparison to nearly every other ratings board in the first world, are ridiculously puritanical when it comes to bad language.
No, they are. I mean, even we look at our Australian and Canadian counterparts who, for all intents and purposes, let films like Trainspotting 2 up in Canada pass at 14A, I think in BC, which is where Vancouver is, and then in New Zealand it was passed at 16, but in the UK it's restricted to 18 and stuff. So yeah, we do look a little bit silly in that respect. I don't know if France, which is the other country I know quite a bit about, does that sort of thing. I've heard pute, putain, connasse, merde, salaud, enfoiré, as low as films as Tout Public. So yeah, we do look a little bit silly in that respect. Although they probably got their own sort of vulgarities that you can't even say as well. I'm sure, if you go to Italy, if you make a joke about the Pope has got a thing stuck up his ass and he fucks donkeys, oh, you could be getting a fine, and Giorgio Maloney will deport your ass.
We've I don't know if Italy has abolished its blasphemy law yet. We in Britain are lucky. Oh, yeah, we have abolished our blasphemy law. Well, at least Great Britain has. Northern Ireland typically has not, but they can fuck off anyway. Of course, France is lucky with its militant secularism that a blasphemy law could never be enforced anyway. I mean, let's face it, France made its, especially given the Catholic Church, France has, throughout its history, made its opinion on that very well known. And again, I suppose in America, yeah, because they've got separation of church and state, but also their First Amendment does protect stuff like this, even if, as a society, America can be ridiculously religious and ridiculously puritanical, or at least it seems to be anyway.
So I think America is a country of contradictions. All this Ron DeSantis stuff, it's certainly got a large porn industry in California. Chatsworth and San Fernando
Dude, you're breaking up a bit.
I'll repeat myself. For a country that seems as puritanical as the US, they've certainly got a large smut industry. I mean, if you go to San Fernando Valley or Chatsworth, you'll be kind of shocked and disgusted. It's not even like Soho, where it's just concentrated in one area. And then, in the US, they produce Game of Thrones. I know people say that's a British show, but it actually was made with American money. I was also written by an American author. Exactly. Because he was obsessed with J.R.R. Tolkien. And that show, I know people talk about the sex and the violence, but that show was also quite salty in the language as well. And you wouldn't expect something that kind of, high fantasy nature to be that vulgar, that violent, that sexual. Never.
Well, it's made specifically for an adult audience, and when I saw it was going to be an HBO, I knew it was going to be what I was in for. I mean, if you ever saw Rome, which was also done on HBO back in the mid-2000s, I will say, point out, R.I.P. Ray Stevenson, who played Titus Pullo. I mean, Rome kind of walked so Game of Thrones could run, but in terms of bad language and nudity and sex, it rivaled it. I mean, it kind of like, once you've seen Rome and seen what you're in for, and the graphic violence and everything, yeah, you're kind of already, you know what you're going to expect from something like Game of Thrones. Plus, there's other things like Deadwood and The Wire, as well as Stars doing Spartacus.
Oh, I can't forget that one. But no, you are right. It's just maybe I'm a little bit conservative on this, but it's always been a little bit weird to me when you have, let's say, a high fantasy show set like in Middle Earth or something that has that type of language and stuff.
Dude, you're breaking up.
Fucking bastard. No, it's just because of the Wi-Fi signals. I wasn't saying that at you, but I was just saying it's always a bit weird to have high fantasy shows with that kind of language and stuff in it because it's always aimed at sort of kid or nerdy teen audience. So, that's why the few clips I've seen of Game of Thrones always has made me scratch my head a little bit as to why it's this bold, because Lord of the Rings never was like that. But sorry, I got myself off topic there. I'll reel it back in for everyone.
Yeah, but well, obviously, as I've said, I mean, clearly, Game of Thrones was made for that sort of audience. I mean, I've read some books like Orcs by Stan Nichols, which again is based on that sort of Tolkien-esque high fantasy thing, but was aimed at an older audience, and as such is full of swearing, sex, and drug usage. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, kind of like sometimes it's you just kind of expect it.
Oh yeah, but I understand there. It's just me sort of ranting on and stuff because you know how I am. I'm kind of out of touch with mainstream reality. I'm the person who thinks that if you swear to your grandmother, she's going to clip you in the ear. Or if you talk about certain topics in the table with your grandma or your mother, you get clipped at the ear. Even if you're 30, even if you're 40. It's weird like that.
Well, I mean, my grandparents are all dead, so I couldn't really say much about them. I mean, sometimes I've sworn by my parents, sometimes I don't. I mean, depending on the situation. But we're grown now. We just kind of point we just don't care. Yeah. Just trying to think of what other films we can speak in relation to bad language, because probably seen most Kevin Smith films like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which just opens up with that rap that Jay does.
No, but a lot of his films are quite vulgar, anyways. But I think the voice spender is Zach and Miri, also part of it because of the sexual content, which got the film the NC-17, but they re-rated an R without any further cuts, which makes me happy. But it's one of the few American films I can think of that has quite a more relaxed use of the C word. There's a scene where they're inside a sort of dirty shop or something, and he says, like, something episode 8, the wrath of, you guessed it.
Which film was also about?
Zack and Miri.
All right, I've only seen it once, and it's an okay film, and I didn't really think too much about it.
One of the few American films that has a relaxed use of the C word, as well as 3 Billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri, and 7 Psychopaths.
Okay. Right. Well, fair enough. And I suppose other films that have lots of swearing, and of course the Cornetto trilogy.
Can I get any of you cunts to drink? That's the first time.
First time I'd ever heard the word cunt in a 15. I was, of course, I know it'd been in a 15 beforehand, or at least it would allegedly had in the South Park movie, but I don't remember hearing it. So I mean, I wasn't aware back then you could say cunt in a 15. I always thought like it would automatically, you'd always smack you with a freaking with an 18 if you said it. And of course, yeah, from that, and I started hearing it more and more. They mentioned it like once in Hot Fuzz, and of course, 6 years after that, in fucking what's the next? World's End. Yeah, it was like mentioned 3 times. I was like, what? That is pretty boss. Mind you, I said 3 times isn't that much. Sausage Party has it 3 times, and they got away with a 15. That's pretty cool.
But World's End is British, Sausage Party is Canadian/American, so the impact is probably a little different because UK audiences, as we well know, they don't have that sort of stigma about that sort of word. And if it's Australian, they've probably removed all types of stigma, but you don't know a lot of Australian films that use that word quite liberally. I mean, Romper Stomper doesn't have that many uses of it. I think it's more focused on ethnic and racial slurs on that one.
Well, I do think
I don't know.
I think the racism is probably more, and the racist violence is probably more of a concern about Romper Stomper. I don't think anyone's watching that giving 2 shits about the bad language. I think if you're watching Romper Stomper and you're concerned about the use of bad language, you might want to get your priorities sorted.
Exactly. Well, if it's Mary Whitehouse, she probably would have got her priorities a bit misguided because she is right wing, but I don't know if she's part of that xenophobic anti-immigrant right. Because you talk to anti-immigrant right wingers, some of them can be as vulgar as a left winger. I'll tell you now.
Well, yeah. I mean, we know that. I mean,
they're quite
I don't know.
libertarian.
I know. What's her face? Mary Whitehouse also said about "Till Death Do Us Part." She complained about the bad language, and of course, 3 big comedians, mostly 2 big comedians who are big users. That film to mind are Bernard Manning and Roy Chubby Brown. The latter being allegedly the first person to say "cunt" on stage. In fact, when Mary Whitehouse died, Bernard Manning said, "She'll be missed, but not by me," because yeah, they both use a lot of racial slurs in their thing. And Bernard Manning becoming pretty much infamous for it, being his whole shtick of Roy Chubby Brown is pretty much the same anyway. And of course, yeah, they were big on the use of bad language, and of course they swore like sailors as well because they were in working men's clubs and everything. Yeah, so I mean, there's kind of right. We say libertarian, but to be honest, if you're anti-immigration, you're not really libertarian. So yeah, that's
well, I mean, it's selective issues, but yeah, no, I do get what you mean. Well, Nigel Farage, he's probably got a bit of a potty mouth himself, but he has to appear sort of like upper middle class to his voters, drinking a pint and having a ciggy to show how British I am. Well, you don't want these immigrants out of the EU. The reason why I decided to bring up ethnic and racial slurs is because I do view it as bad language. It just is held in a different sort of criteria than most bad language is concerned, because to me, if you say the N-word or the C-word, you're going to get punched, particularly in the States. Now, in Britain, if you say the N-word, it's probably not as offensive, but it still probably gets you kicked in, depending on which part of the country you're in. If you're in a left-wing area, oh shit. If you're in a right-wing area, champion, less racist, glass, this fucking rock hater right here. I'm not afraid of using those type of slurs because that's how I know people actually think. If you get them to the side in private, they'll tell you some pretty offensive stuff about certain groups. I mean, I've used the K word before, and yes, I've even accused someone saying, well, you call me like a retard or something like that. But go on, you were saying.
Well, yeah, I probably shouldn't say they wasn't that, but yeah, I mean, a lot of them just say it out front anyway. But that's probably getting off. They don't even try to hide it, but yeah, probably getting off topic here. I'm just wondering how much more can we really cover? Because we've covered all the most obvious swearing films. We could also mention 4 Weddings and a Funeral, which has more which according to IMDb has 28 uses of the F-bomb, but I haven't heard it. But I don't know. The only thing I can only think about one scene where they actually swear that much when they go, "Oh fuck." fuck me, fuck, when he's trying to get ready for that wedding. Because again, that seems like quite a tame film and everything, but yeah.
Well, back then, the F word, if you said it way too many times, you could get an 18 certificate. Back then, motherfucker could get to 18. Nowadays, 15 uncut.
Yeah, well, it's the same. Well, yeah, well, there's a bit of hypocrisy back then because films like Point Break, Die Hard 2, and Cliffhanger all had to have their use of word fuck cut down in order to get a 15 rating, and yet from the BBFC, because Furman was being just a hypocrite, because Glenn Ross got a completely uncut 15 rating in spite of the fact it had well over 100 uses of fuck and 3 uses of cunt. Just well, hang on a second, why did that get an uncut 15? Oh, well, it won't appeal to 15-year-olds, so it doesn't matter. It's well, that's a bit dickish, especially if it doesn't appeal to 15-year-olds. Why the hell do they need a 15 anyway? I mean, just bizarre.
Well, I kind of understand, but I don't understand. He used to do that a lot. He would base a lot of his decisions based on audience demographics or class matters. That's why he went easy on the art films, more so than mainstream pop movies. That if you put too much violence or sex, oh no, you can't show that. So yeah, a lot of that was happening. Now BBFC, I hope, are a bit more uniform and don't engage that sort of weird class age discrimination stuff that you saw during the Furman years. But he is right. Quadrophenia is a film that comes to mind, which was past X in the cinema back in the good old days, or at least during your parents' generation. But then when they re-released it, like in the 90s or something, it got a 15, surprisingly, despite having a lot more uses than one of that word, combined with other scenes yep, that's the one. We talk about on the youth adolescent podcast. That had
to be honest, that's probably not something
6 or 8 uses.
14 times according to IMDb.
That's unthinkable. And I always assumed it was an 18 film for so long.
It does go to show that basically the BBFC have moved on and are actually really, really chillaxing and cooling their jets and everything. And yeah, again, as I've said, I'm glad that they're not that zealous anymore. I'm glad they're cooler about this.
Well, what I meant
hold on a second. It was a 15 in 1996. Okay, that's a bit more surprising, because I'm surprised Furman was that cool about it.
That's what I meant. That earlier on, you can not even say fuck many times in the movie. So you could say that. I was like, maybe The Who and Pete Townsend probably slipped in a few bob and say, oi, fella, pass us stuff at 15. We'll buy you a pint at the pub next time. You cheeky lads. That's why I don't like The Who. I like Electric Light Orchestra. Although I do like Quadrophenia as a film. It's got Phil Daniels from EastEnders.
Right. I don't really think much about those types of music, to be honest. That's not really something bad. Also worth pointing out, on the list of movies with the uses of the word fuck in, there is currently a list of 168 movies, and a South Park movie doesn't even make the list.
You what? Oh. That's caught me by surprise.
Yeah, because numbers 161 through to 168 all have 150 uses of fuck, and South Park is counting at 144. Granted, that's in an 82-minute movie, so of course, yeah, a bit more impactful. But yeah,
the frequency level, and also because it's animated, probably makes the impact stronger. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I mean, if it's an animated work, I'm always going to be a little bit more surprised than if it's live action, because most people think animation is for children. There are still people who have that mindset. I'm sure your parents are like that too.
Well, Well, I would have thought so. I mean, they know perfectly about South Park and everything. I mean, I wouldn't imagine in the year 2023 people hear animation automatically think it's for children. If anyone does, I mean, I just want to know where the fuck have they been the past 20 to 30 years?
I mean, my mother was, and maybe my father was just a little bit like that. Although they did know about Fritz the Cat, and they said, "You're not watching that. We're gonna ground you if you put it on Fritz the Cat." And South Park I couldn't watch, but most other stuff they didn't quite know what it was. That's kind of one of the reasons why I got to get away with watching certain anime I did at that age, because they didn't know too much about it. Had it been, me bringing out South Park on Love Film or something, they would have cracked down on it.
Well, I mean,
So it's a
possibly,
matter of
again,
what they don't know, what they do know. And also, I don't have siblings like you do, so I never got to see naughty stuff behind people's backs. I was a bit sheltered in that respect, except for watching Men in Black at 4, but mustn't tell.
well, I mean,
Sorry.
no, what really matters at the end of the day, because I mean, it's all in the past. And let's face it, you didn't really break any laws or anything. Again, saw freaking RoboCop when I was about 5 or 6. So I mean, go figure that. Are we really? Yeah, I guess we've come. Is there any not much more to really cover, really, is there?
I think we've ran our course, really, and there's a convoy of motorbikes coming on our way, so I'll probably will cut this off short. But it's been nice having you on board, and thank you for talking our asses off about this fucking subject, you cunt-sucking motherfucking asshole, son of a bitch. Sorry,
Yes,
I
yes,
had
yes.
to do that.
Well, no. Well, no. Do shut your fucking face, Uncle Fucker, because you are such a shit-faced cockmaster. And, well, why would I call you a pig fucker? Well, for starters, you fuck pigs. Yeah. So fuck, mother of fuck, as they say. Okay. Sorry, just thought I'd get the swear words in, just to make sure if this does get rated, it doesn't accidentally get rated 12A or PG-13, because we might lose a bit of street cred, that.
Oh, I always put content filters on my work. The only one that has ever been restricted is my drugs podcast, which does not show anything. In fact, it actually warns people about the effects of substance abuse, but it was still banned and restricted. So, oh. So let's see if I can do that again and see if I can get this podcast restricted to 18 plus, because that would be an honor. But
Okay, then. Fair enough. All right. Well, we'll see what it is, and we'll just call it there, I guess.
all right then. Well, till then, fuck you very much. I'm gonna lick on a twat, asshole.
Go fuck off, you cunts.